Welcome to Jurassic World.
Guests, welcome to Jurassic World Minute. We visit Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. You don't see that every day. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And on this episode we're discussing minute 79 of Jurassic World. Before we get to that, David, heading back over to Jurassic-Pedia.com, we're revisiting an article I think we touched on when we started these minutes on the 2015, well at the time 2015 Jurassic World incident on the Isla Nublar. Now edited to 2015/16 to include the events of Camp Cretaceous Season 3.
That is true, yes. And
this article was already a massive, pretty much play-by-play on the background of the island leading into Jurassic World and the events that take part in the incident on that day back in 2015. But of course now a lot of the Camp Cretaceous stuff from Season 1, 2 and 3, as best we can demise where it fits in the film. Sometimes it's easy to pick, sometimes it's sort of a little bit of guesswork, but for the most part it all plays pretty good through there and it's a good read.
Yeah, it is. We also kind of took out the blocky chunks kind of formatting and then reformatted it into a nice, much more friendlier list format where you're able to kind of figure when things are happening based on the time given, which I think was kind of lost in the original formatting of the article.
Yeah. I need to stop reading, otherwise I'm going to have dead air. It describes what's happening here in these minutes as well. The pteranodon dimorphodon flock fleeing from the hole in the aviary. I'm reading again, sorry. There's a lot of good stuff here, and one thing when we're watching some of the episodes in Camp Cretaceous, just sort of wondering where this would be in the timeline of the Jurassic World incident. Mainly, just the Indominus is here. We know she's going to be getting chased by the helicopter at the aviary in a little while, and just things like that, and all this sort of meshes together quite nice. So before I keep reading more, head over to anything else on that?
No, I think we're good.
All right, head over to Jurassic-Pedia.com for that extensive article on the events that took part in that December day back in 2015, where Jurassic World as we know it ended.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to a containment anomaly, all guests must take shelter immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, due to a containment anomaly, all guests must take shelter immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, due to a containment anomaly, all guests...
Dave, reading in minute 79.
Yeah.
Alright, minute 79, Jurassic World opens with the escaped pteranodons flying over the forest canopy and ends with the return of Zara on a phone to Claire amongst a crowd of people from the Innovation Centre. As we continue to minute 79, the chaos continues as the escaped pteranodons and dimorphodons fly south from the aviary toward the resort. We cut to a danger 10,000 volt sign as the camera pulls back to reveal a set of gates in the forest, And we've seen that sign before from the old park, and we also recognise the danger high voltage sign that's to the left of it. We've mentioned before about artistic choices with some of the old park infrastructure, and here I know a lot of people, when they seen the film, thought this was sort of our standard perimeter gates that we got in Jurassic Park and the Lost World. There's differences. Seemingly no electricity here, so I'm not quite sure why we have the high voltage signs when there's no cable fence.
I'm thinking that at some point it did in fact have electricity running through it, and just no longer does now. And when they abandoned the rest of the park, which I now have a theory of why. So it was recently found out that among the props that Universal released was some of the paper props from the deleted scene from The Lost World, where Ludlow is getting the board members to nix Hammond and place him in charge. One of the papers that he's shuffling through is a petition that lets InGen know that Costa Rica has filed a class action lawsuit against InGen on behalf of employees who had been involved with the cleanup of the island. This would imply to me that employees kept getting attacked by the dinosaurs still living on Isla Nublar, and in fact had decided to just all out quit, and that's why there's still all this old park stuff still there, because they never finished the cleanup because the workers kept getting attacked, and so they just quit and filed a lawsuit against InGen.
Is that the emails that we getting posted around a couple of weeks ago?
No, this was an actual paper prop that Universal had in display at the Universal Orlando Legacy gift shop, where they had like a bunch of the props that they pulled out of their archives on display.
And that, again, that's something I would have loved to see. I would love to know more about, and it's a shame because it sort of takes... It's in that grey area of that boardroom scene where we've discussed many times, canon, yes, no. It's still being aired on TNT and television networks and cut from all your DVDs and streaming services. Just how much of that we should be taking as canon or not. It makes perfect sense though, because if we already know Jurassic Park had the Spanish construction work crews building the park, of course they're going to use the same people that then pull the park down. And it also does give a good reason why a lot of the front of the visitor centre is not there, because they've been deconstructing it before that T-Rex kept on coming past looking for more snacks, or here, if this was a perimeter fence, if this was a fence into the Lofsaw paddock, whatever you want to put this fence being. Yeah, just the fact that they may have been pulling the cables down and stopped. We don't know how much of the area was deconstructed when Jurassic World was being built. We know from before, like Masrani was nearly going to look at putting some of the old park stuff into an exhibit and then decided not to. Was stuff pulled out then. Cable doesn't last a long time in the tropics. You can see just looking at this gate structure as well. It's pretty heavily rusted, being out in the elements all the time. Much like we would have seen with a vehicle, or maybe an Explorer that we get next film that's been out in the elements as well. So that's quite possibly what could have happened. Could have happened there. The Explorer is another thing for the next movie too, but that could have easily been on a transport vehicle or something being taken to the North Dock or something, and the convoy was attacked, and that's why it ended up not where it's supposed to be. Just little things like that can be explained away by crews being on the island decommissioned. We know they deconstructed the Jurassic Park gates, and then later used that reclaimed timber to build the new Jurassic World one. So it makes sense if those gates were pulled down after the Jurassic incident, the timber would still be in good condition, the building materials would still be in good condition to rebuild these gates. It's not like we first thought when we got to the gates that those old gates have been sitting in the jungle for 20 years, and all of a sudden they just pull the doors down and reconstitute them into the Jurassic World gates. all that stuff makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's amazing, like, how much one little paper prop can, how big of holes one little detail that we never even see in the final movie can answer so many questions. And that's what I love about these movies, is like the devil is always in the details.
Yep. And then you quite easily say that, well, InGen just, okay, they couldn't do it. They got this pending lawsuit. If we'll just blankly deny that there's any animals still left on the island, they'd still have all the documentation for the lysine contingency, how that was supposed to destroy the animals, and they could just go with that and say, well, they're all destroyed, and nothing on Nublar exists. And of course, keep this lawsuit under wraps because if word got out that the animals weren't only just there, but they were still attacking workmen, and the InGen would be in a world of trouble. Which I suppose would have all come out in '97 anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were talking about Jurassic World.
Yeah. Well, the gates still. So yeah, there's not a lot to these gates. They definitely haven't got that steel structure and tunnel like we've seen from other perimeter fences in the Jurassic era, and it looks like there's a chain around it with a padlock too, that must have been done after the fact.
And yet, I still like the design of it. I mean, it still is evocative of the first park, and you can see that in just like the design of it with the crisscrossing beams and all the little things about it, like the high voltage signs. It's a little whimsy of nostalgia, you know.
And we should correct ourselves too. We have mentioned in the past that the Indominus is the only set still in existence, the Indominus paddock, but these gates are still in Hawaii. I believe they've put the "When Dinosaurs Rule the Earth" banner above them. If not, that's a prop people have been putting up there to get photos in front of them. So they are still there.
The gyrosphere station is still there too.
Yeah, yep. So there are a couple of things still in existence that have been kept built. As for the chain and the padlock, I'm guessing that's just there's obviously a road here leading to the old park, and it's just locked up to keep employees and wayward guests that are on the path away from the old park.
And yet, as rusty as that chain is, I have no belief that this Jeep can smash through it. Sorry. I think the best version I've seen of somebody trying to smash a truck through a locked gate is in Logan, where he tries to run the limousine through a padlocked fence, and he just ends up dragging the fence and getting the fence caught all up inside the limousine, and he has to abandon the limousine. And I'm like, yeah, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You're not breaking the chain; it's just going to become a pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah, and that could be the other thing too here, just lastly on the gates, is what their original purpose may have been. In Jurassic Park, the air quotes visitor compound wasn't exactly a compound. The main park was over in the east, and all the visitor buildings were sort of dotted amongst the greenery and that, but there was no perimeter fence around the visitor area. It was the perimeter fence of the park. So if these gates were still part of that old perimeter fence, then they'd be heading east here and not south towards the resort. But
I don't actually think it's part of that. I think it's just an area where it had, they had something in the old park that had been fenced off that we really never even seen, and this is just an old service road that they had locked up so people wouldn't go into the old park area.
And this could be just something makeshift they put together out of recovered assets from those perimeter fence gates or something they've put up here just to block this road off and block the access off to the old park.
Yeah, that's true too.
Which is why you don't really see much of a continuation of a fence either side of it. And that's why there might not be cables there apart from the deconstruction theory.
Mm-hmm. Well, after they smash through the fence, you can see along the road when the camera pans the other way that they're actually there's like along the Triceratops paddock, it's just a which that could be as well. This could be near one of the old paddocks at this point. And that's just a service road where the gates there to keep so the dinosaurs didn't wander in between paddocks if they decided that they didn't mind the barbed wire fencing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And again, it could just be something that's on location as well, being shot in Hawaii. But yeah, as the Jeep approaches, it obviously isn't slowing down. As you said before, it bursts through those gates like they'll nothing. And the age-old have a sandbag explode there just to make the impact look a little bit harder. But as you're saying, these gates were probably built in an era by engineers to be half dinosaur proof. So it yeah, it's one of those biggest things in movies, as you said before, ramming the chain link fence and that. A lot of times where vehicles are just running through closed gates, locked doors, sides of buildings, I'm pretty sure the original Knight Rider done it all and never put a scratch on that car. So this behind the scenes stuff of this set piece, we'll post them up on the social medias as well, with the crane, the boom car, and that in front of it, and the Collins in the Jeep with the boys as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
But the boys are laughing at each other, and as we hear the Jeep still running badly, Zach says to Gray, "Okay, that's it, we're safe now." Which makes me wonder if they think that fence is going to keep the Indominus out if the Indominus was chasing them, or if at this point they can see the resort ahead and know that they're almost home safe.
Mm-hmm. I think it was more of just I didn't think they actually thought they would break through that fence.
Well, it could also be just a moment of hope before we get Gray looking at that rear vision mirror and seeing the pteranodons approaching from behind, and that's when we get the animals fly overhead. Thankfully, the canopy of trees protecting the boys, but Gray yells "Go, go, go!" and pounds the dashboard of the Jeep, and we get a quick series of cuts as Zach's expertly changing gears in the Jeep and launching forward for quicker down the road, but again coughing and spluttering and not running very well at all. And I suppose that could be a little flashback to Muldoon trying to change gears in Jeep 12, I think it was.
Yeah, true.
Which I suppose, yeah, too, it's the same. You see the same top of the gear knob and that we would have seen back then.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when we cut to a very high wall, and we can see Gate 5 written there. Similar construction to what we've seen earlier with the Indominus paddock, just those stacks of concrete blocks to make this wall. And I'd always thought, back when the film came out, that this was the sort of the boundary of the restriction zone. But as we cut to the two guards on top of the wall, you can clearly see the innovation centre above the trees behind them. So the novel also describes this as a protective barrier from the resort, keeping the resort and the park itself separate. So this is sort of your perimeter fence that Tim, Lex and Alan would have climbed in Jurassic Park, and here we've just got a big solid wall to keep everything out.
Well, I mean, at one side, it's interesting that they would have walled off the resort in this way. On the other hand, it's probably best that a Stegosaurus doesn't wander into Main Street in the middle of the night, you know?
I can only imagine when this was all being fought out, with insurance and everything, there'd have to be some sort of safety designs or something put in place, particularly because of what's happened in the past with these animals. So, okay, we're not going to have emergency bunkers, but we are going to have a massive wall to keep the park out. But then you go and put one of the deadliest carnivores that ever walked the earth inside that that perimeter with the guests in the Tyrannosaur and Tyrannosaur Kingdom. So, but I suppose they did have the Velociraptor holding pen right next to the visitor centre as well. So they no one's learning from past mistakes here.
No, they're making all new ones.
yeah, exactly. And it's a shame. I'm guessing this is a CG wall section here that we see as the boys approach, but it's sort of, we're in the same sort of area as what we see in Fallen Kingdom when the armoured vehicle convoy comes up on the resort as well. So it would have been good to see some of this wall from those aerial shots and that, but sadly this is the only time we see it in the franchise. The two men watch as the Jeep approach and the boys are calling out to them, and we get I'm going to describe them as the white guy and the black guy because it's a white guy and a black guy. I'm not trying to be racist, that's just what I'm seeing on screen. But the white guy says, well, that's a first. And Makes me wonder what the first is. We're going to get to the novel in a minute and what the novel thinks the first is, but is it the first time we've seen a Jurassic era Jeep? Is it the first time we've seen one coming out of the jungle? He's probably been told that everyone's inside the fence, so all of a sudden we got people in a Jeep beeping the horn and coming towards the gate, yelling and screaming. What do you reckon the first is?
All of it. But my problem with this is that they actually cut that joke out in the TV cut, and I hate it so much because this is like my favorite joke in the whole movie.
Oh, do they? That's weird.
Yeah, it cuts straight from them honking the horn and yelling "Open the gate" to the pan-up shot of the pteranodons coming over the tree line.
Oh, wow. Oh, I wonder what other little ones like that have been done as well. TV cuts, man, they screw off movies sometimes.
You do. I think has your general ever been flying into war with you line was also cut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So someone in editing the room just isn't for comedy. Cutting all the best lines out. And we sort of mentioned before too whether or not this is ACU, how many ACU troopers are left. Well, this is just general park security because we got these guys here. We had them up on the helipad earlier when Masrani takes flight, just on guard with those electric rifles, electric dart rifles. But they've sort of got that grimace. They're not really reacting to anything they're seeing apart from this Jeep coming forward. In the Jeep, the boys are yelling, "Open the gate, let us in." It's sort of, if the Indominus was following, I'd understand, but are they really seeing the pteranodons as a threat at the moment, even though they're just sort of flying overhead? We haven't seen any try to swoop down and attack or anything, and getting through the gate's not going to stop an aerial attack anyway, so it seems to be help let us through when it's not really going to achieve much.
I think they just kind of went through regardless, you know?
Mm. And it does raise another big question here if these animals are approaching. I know how it should have ended the YouTube series there. Just asks a question too. Why do these animals not have the implants, the shocking implants that these two guys just push a button, they all fall out of the sky dead? Or at least electrocute them and try and get them to steer away from the resort anyway. I can only guess because they're enclosed in the dome in the aviary and they didn't think they'd ever get out. Because they wouldn't need the invisible barrier system like some of the other animals would. Or do you reckon they'd want to try and keep the animals separate in the aviary as well?
Yeah. Well, I think they never really imagined the aviary being breached to this level, you know?
Mm. But then the part of the implant itself is being able to, or have the ability to track, and I'm guessing monitor the vitals of the animal as well. We know the Indominus had an implant, and she was by herself in a little pen, so you could wonder why they'd need to track her or have the invisible fence system or be able to shock her, unless that's just another security protocol that all the animals had them in the event they got near the resort, in a worst case scenario. Maybe.
I always kind of imagined that the Indominus was considered like ultimate level dangerous. That's why it had the implanted head, you know?
Mm. Anyway, that doesn't happen. The two guards slowly raise their heads as the shouts of you can start to hear the sounds of the approaching flock, and look up from the Jeep and see those animals approaching, and that's the last we see of Jeep 29, which is a shame that it hasn't come up later in Camp Cretaceous, because it's probably still parked there at that gate. Which makes you wonder how they got from the gate to the resort, if they kept on driving, or if they parked it there and got into a golf cart, or what. We don't really see what happens. They just appear in Main Street in a couple of minutes' time with Zara.
Yeah.
Anything else on the wall before we cut back to Owen and Claire?
No, I think we're good.
All right. We cut to Owen and Claire running down a jungle path, and we can hear vehicles and a crowd chattering as they emerge from the jungle, and they're immediately passed by park staff running in every direction in panic. And that's when Claire's phone rings and she answers it without touching the screen. She just pulls it straight up to her ear and starts talking into it. And it's sort of I wonder what this area is. Again, the novel's going to sort of explain that we're at the aviary employee car park, which would explain why they haven't just come through that wall as well.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, it also makes sense to have a private parking area for the employees, so that they didn't actually, so they didn't have to like ride the monorail and be at the mercy of the monorail. Like if there was ever a need to have a large employee service at this specific area, you know.
And we've talked about the whole Disney magic of the resort on top and the park workings underneath, or out of view of the public anyway. It's I just would have loved a sign, an aviary that way, point arrow or something here, just so we sort of get an idea of what location we're in, because they just run out of the jungle here. They haven't come across that fence the boys went past. We know they were at the old visitors centre. If that area's been fenced off, surely they would have come across a fence to get out of that area. But here they are, just in the middle of the jungle, and vehicles, cars, employees, people just going everywhere, yelling and screaming.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I did remember one last thing about the wall, is that shot of the pteranodons rising over the tree line being framed against mountains and the two guys is actually a frame that originated in the in one of the concept art pictures from the Lost World.
I'm just trying to think of all that. Oh, there's a lot of concept art for the Lost World, but I'm just trying to think. Oh, that's interesting. We'll post that up in the Facebook group as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we cut from that area back to the front of the Innovation Centre. We're back on Main Street. As we can see a mass of people just sitting, waiting, not having anything else to do. We mentioned previously whether or not there was going to be attractions in the resort itself, operational. This would suggest no, and the novel's going to suggest no as well, even though we see in coming minutes people enjoying the local restaurants and that as well. So not as much anger here as what I thought there'd be, and we're going to get to that next minute as well. Just people calmly sitting, more so just because they're calling. Probably some of them are fans, just not actors. They're just sitting there happy to be on screen in a Jurassic film, and not an irate local at a tourist park like I've experienced before. But Zara's moving through the crowd on a phone to Claire. We spotted the boys in surveillance, and we don't get the end of that sentence because it's the end of the minute, but we know they've been spotted at Gate 5 and she's on her way to pick them up.
It's interesting because the car park we see here almost kind of looks like it's just a random switchback road they found on Isla Nublar. On Oahu, you know? Like a paved switchback road.
Well, again, we don't see what's behind the camera. Again,
No.
we're here at the side of the whole nine, or the golfing green maintenance building or something. Just this section of asphalt that's out in the middle of the jungle on this road that they were able to park vehicles, and we're going to see what vehicles are there next minute. They've got pretty much the whole menagerie of vehicles that they had on loan for the film there, just to populate the car park.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else on that before we get to the novel comparisons?
And no, I think we're good.
All right. As I said before, in the novel, the wall's said to protect the resort from the rest of the island. When the white guy says that's a first, I don't know if it's monologue or it's described that he's never actually seen one of the old Jeeps moving, which makes me wonder how many others of the Jeeps he's seen around the abandoned in the park. If that's a first refers to I've never seen one of them going before. So maybe there were some old abandoned Jeeps at the East Dock or something that they've had to move out of the way before, and this poor security guard's been involved.
Mm-hmm.
And Owen and Claire run out of the jungle into the aviary employees' car parking lot. That's when she gets a call from Zara, and had me thinking that's a long way for them to run. When before they were on top of that ridge, seemingly the aviary was miles away from that vantage point they had, and here they are all of a sudden within 5 minutes they've rented a car park, which you brought up in previous minutes just how small this island feels at times when people are on foot running between structures or between sets.
Yeah. And this is another one of those instances, like you said. How do they get from the aviary, that vantage point, miles, like a mile from the aviary, to the parking lot? And then on ATVs, how do they make it so quickly from the aviary to the Main Street area? You know?
Yeah, and okay, there's going to be a little bit of time difference in the film, the way it's shot, and that. But at the same point as the pteranodons and the morphodons have brought Jurassic World down, or Jurassic 1 down, and have started flying overhead, the boys have got through the gate and got... So they're slightly ahead of the pteranodons as they get overtaken as they fly over and the gate and get to the Main Street. And then Owen and Claire would have to be running, first get down that off that ridge and then run across through the jungle to get to the aviary within the 5 or 6 minutes it takes for the pteranodons to reach Main Street and start causing havoc, only to be there right in the midst of the attack just before Zara dies. So they get there the same time as the boys, pretty much. So, yeah, it's not going to be the last time. But that's minute 79. David, we're moving steadily towards the end of the film. We've only got about 30 minutes left, so it's all about to hit the fan again. So we'll get out of here today, and we'll be back next week with a couple more minutes.
All right.